Well, I'm going to get started and assume that other people will drop in as I'm doing introductions. I want to welcome everyone. We are really excited to have you join us tonight. Saving Water, this program is being presented by the Congregation Shir Hadash Sustainability Committee. I'm Linda Allen, and I co-chair the committee with Elisa Clark. The committee provides programs to improve our environment, to mitigate climate change, and to strive for a better world through modeling green practices, educating congregants and the community to adopt environmentally friendly practices, and acting to impact environmental policy at the community, state, and national levels. Water holds an important place in our Jewish tradition. The very first sentence in the Torah refers to water. When God was about to create heaven and earth, the earth was chaos, unformed, and on the chaotic water's face there was darkness. The creation continues from there with the creation of the separation of the oceans and the skies, separation with the land. As we know that Eden was set between two rivers. And as we continue, we have Noah and the floods. Wells are the landmarks in the travels of the matriarchs and patriarchs. And in the wilderness, over and over again, we hear the Hebrews lament about the need for water and how important the water is. We have the symbol of Miriam's well, which traveled with the Hebrews through their journeys in the wilderness. This need is reflected in our liturgy, where we pray in summer for the dew to fall upon us. Water is no less important to us today. So we are very pleased to introduce Michael Potter and Gary Kramen, who will talk about our experience of water and what we can do as individuals and community to make a difference. Gary Kramen is the District 7 Director representing the Western Hills communities, which includes Shir Hadash and Saratoga, Cupertino, Los Gatos, Mountain View, Los Altos, and up through Palo Alto. He's the 2021 Vice Chairperson for the Valley Water Board of Directors, serves on many board advisory and joint committees with other local water agencies. And Mike Potter is the Community Outreach Program Supervisor in the Office of Communications for Valley Water. So we're really delighted to have them with us, and they're going to begin with a presentation about what's going on now.
So,
one last.
Everyone, if you can hear me, maybe shake your head or do an up thing.
Yeah, we can.
Okay, well, first, thank you for the invite. But the most important thing that I feel I am is I'm an elementary school classmate of Sheldon Gilbert. We grew up in the same 14,000 person town. So that's where I would say I peaked in life. Okay.
As I recall, you drank a lot of water back then as well. So.
So yeah, what you said is basically true. I represent you on the board of Valley Water. We're the wholesaler, basically, for the roughly 2 million people in Santa Clara County, which means we sell water to other people and we're responsible for supply. And I'm here basically today. You're kind of you're the sustainability committee, and conservation is always part of sustainability. And despite what just occurred last weekend, we're still in a extreme drought, which is the worst of all the drought stages that you can have. And we've had droughts for a long time. You know, those that think about California might know John Steinbeck in East of Eden talked about, you know, during the dry years, people forget about the wet years, and during the wet years, they forget about the dry years, and it always has been like that. A lot of people might not know, but Avinu Malkeinu that Rabbi Akiva came up with was actually a prayer for rain originally. So I could go through, if we had more time, I could go through the Midrash, I could go through almost every part of the Bible and talking about, when they talk about famine, they're almost always talking about drought. But I don't think we have time for a theological and a history lesson now. So why don't we focus, Mike, if we could go on to the next slide, and feel free to ask questions in real time, because I'll open them. So if you're not familiar with Valley Water, also known as the Santa Clara Valley Water District, we do three things as a government agency. We provide, drinking water, even during droughts, hopefully. We do flood protection, and we're responsible for the creeks. And we got about 700 employees. Our budget is around $600 to $800 million, depending on what we're working on. A lot of our infrastructure is almost back to the New Deal, kind of falling apart. So we're trying to update things, and we have tons of programs. And we could talk a little bit more, but we don't have unlimited time. So Mike, why don't we go on to the next slide? So, a lot of you are in Los Gatos. I asked, where does the water come from? So Los Gatos in kind of that part of the West Valley is a little bit unique because we're only supplying around 20% of the water. Most of it's coming from the surface water, Lexington Reservoir, which is not us, it's San Jose Water. So it's kind of unique in the Valley or Santa Clara County, other than the Hetch Hetchy places, that you do have this other alternative water supply. But depending on where you are, we do 100%. So that's where kind of locally we get, well, I'll go into more where Santa Clara gets its water, but I just wanted to kind of show something very local. Let me talk about use a little bit if we go on to the next slide. So most people, if you think California is a state where our water goes, only 10% of the water is used by urban folks like ourselves. Most of it, half of it, goes to the environment and the rivers and wildlife, and 40% is used by agriculture. If you look in our county where it's used, and this is one of the reasons conservation is so important, if we go on to the next slide, that more than a quarter of it is used for ornamentation outside, landscaping. About a quarter of it's used inside in folks' homes. And that's kind of where you'd expect it to be used, showers and toilets and the washers and leaks and stuff like that. Only in our county, not very much is used for agriculture. In the state, we talked about 40%. It's only 8% in our county, mostly around Gilroy and Morgan Hill. Business uses about 30% of it, and some of that's landscaping, but some of that's actually in the business process. And increasingly, we're getting dedicated landscape meters. Localities are requiring it. So we talked a little bit about water use, and the good news is there's a lot of things we can do here, and we'll get in more, is the Sustainability Committee. I mean, we'll talk more about this, but we know we can get that outdoor residential use just down to for trees, and do other things with folks' gardens and stuff like that. In indoor, well, we'll go into that. So why don't I be more particular and talk about where the county water comes from? And I know I'm bouncing around from Los Gatos, but I also heard there's a lot of people in the county. So only 30% of the water comes from the sky. And we're kind of like the land of Israel, if you follow the 12th century Rabbi David Kimmy, who talked about how Israel was not in a valley and didn't get the same kind of water, Mesopotamia and Egypt did. So only 30% of the water comes from the sky, and we capture some of that in our local reservoirs like Lexington and others. We import 50% of our water from hundreds of miles away in a series of canals and other methods that it gets here. We take wastewater, about 5% of our water comes from wastewater that we recycle to a certain level of purification. And it's used in cooling towers, It's used for some outdoor irrigation, like in medians. And we have conservation on this list. It's not really exactly a supply. It's more on the demand side, but we think of that kind of as a source. So here's why we're here today. You might have heard, I know, we're in an extreme drought, and I'll show you some of the statistics next page. The problem we're having is, even if you look at 50% of our water supply, we're only getting 5% of our allocation from the state. And so 95% of our water on the state just disappeared. From the federal government, we're only getting 25% of our water, and our ag territories in the South are getting 0%. So this is water flowing in the county. We're not getting any. And for those areas like Palo Alto and Stanford and part of Los Altos Hills and Mountain View that get water from Hetch Hetchy, they've announced already 50% allocation cut. And we do have some water stored outside, but we're really having trouble getting it back into the county. And we're finding it increasingly difficult to even purchase emergency water supply at any price. And it's all compounded by the fact that of our storage in the county, reservoirs like Lexington, the biggest one called Anderson Reservoir, for seismic reasons, it was safe when it was built, but it isn't safe now, so we've emptied it. So half our water storage is gone. We store in the other reservoirs could all fit in Anderson, and none of them are full. And we do store some water in the aquifer, but we're starting to take that out at a fast rate, and you can't take it out. And there's just a limited amount there. And if you take it out too fast, the ground subsides. We're actually seeing 1 or 2 wells. There are many people in our county who don't have city water. They have well water. And just before the rain, we saw kind of the first canary in the coal mine, so to speak, not to be for coal or anything like that. Well started running dry already. So we're starting to see it. And recycled water, which is our kind of hope for the future, unfortunately, there's less water in the system, so there's less water that's getting recycled. And conservation is really dependent on meetings like this, folks listening to what we have to say. And we did, in the beginning, when we started getting the message out, we've actually had some communities that have gone up in water use. Now we're at about 6% decrease from last year. We're targeting 15%, but it's really about public participation. And us as a water wholesaler, we can't tell, we only can give you things like pay you to remove your lawn, or give you rain barrels, or give you free inspections. We can't do any of the restrictions. That's kind of up to people's local retailers. So if we go on to the next slide, here's one of the core issues of what's going on. I have seen this map. This is a Drought Monitor map. This is a map that the government puts out every couple weeks. And I've seen this map, and this time of the year, the entire map is white, which means there's no problem. Right now, in our county and around us, we're between an extreme drought and an exceptional drought. The last year, actually the last 2 years, have been the worst 2 years in California history, recorded history. And, we can look back with tree rings and things like that. So not only do we not have storage, this is causing no water to come into the county, or very little water come into the county. And us as a urban area, we got priority, and we're still kind of, if you go out to San Luis Reservoir on the way to Los Banos, if any of you ever driven to LA, I don't know if anyone here has, there's elk running around the bottom of that thing because there's hardly any water in it. It's like a marsh. And many of the other reservoirs in the state, while the recent rain has been good, locally, they've only added 1% to our storage. So I don't know, from 88% empty to 87%. But a lot of that water is not reserved for people, it's reserved for fish. So they're still in a pretty grim, they are in a grim situation. And preliminarily this winter, while we had this great storm, it looks like a great storm, it's looking like it's going to be a pretty dry winter. And you can kind of see some of that if you look on the next slide and to the price of water. We're used to, and this is some wonky thing, the price, $200 for the amount of water that covers an acre of land per foot. Now, depending on where we are, it's 4 to 4.5 times what it was the last couple of years. And it's, even though you see this, it's so hard to get it here because until recently there was 0 snowpack left, a function of climate change. I'll show you a picture next to show you how bad it was. And all these reservoirs upstream of us, there's no water there. The water is being held for fish and other things. And getting the water into our county across the Sacramento River and the Delta, nearly impossible because you can't have no water flowing out to the ocean because otherwise salt would get in from the bay and that would come into the pumps and it would be so grim. It would be, that'd actually be, we're facing a catastrophe. That's a triple catastrophe if the whole system gets salt in it. So if you look at actually another good way of looking at it, if we look at the next slide, is the snowpack. And during, there's usually snow until August or September, the end of the kind of what they call the water year. But if you look in July this year, there was nothing there and very little of it ran off because the ground has been so dry. It kind of sunk into the ground. And because of this, you know, no snowpack, which is 30% of our storage, a storage system that was designed for 10 million people. We got 40 million here, kind of a storage system that was designed not to give 50% to the environment, which is what us as folks that care about sustainability and important value. It wasn't designed for that. And our local situation that we don't have very much storage here for seismic reasons. It's worth spending, you know, a Thursday night to hear about it because next year looks pretty bad. And by pretty bad, I mean people's wells running dry, depending on where you are, and water rationing that we haven't seen since the 70s. I mean, we're hoping for rain. We're trying to do a bunch of things. And the number one thing we're doing, if we go on to the next slide, is working on conservation because we believe we could get up to 30% savings. Right now, we've mandated 15%, but we think we could do much better. And we have some pretty cool programs that we fund on the carrot side of things as opposed to the stick. We have like this website where it's kind of like Amazon to get water saving things, but it's free. So it's better than Amazon. You don't have to pay anything. So you can get like shower heads and aerators. It's that watersavings.org. We'll pay you to rip out your landscape. Households $3,000 up to $3,000, businesses up to $100,000. We'll give you a rebate if you take like gray water, like what comes out of your shower, which is relatively clean, run it through some filters and use it for your landscaping. We got money for that. We got tons of other rebate programs for water intensive businesses, for people who own apartment buildings. We got to turn meters. A lot of apartment buildings don't have individual water meters in. We have money for that to do the conversion. In many places, we have ways of store. We'll give you rebates to store your rainwater and cisterns. We'll come out and look at your house, both inside and outside, for free. That's zero. And we'll tell you what you can do with it. We'll even allow you, I hate to say, but you can go complain about your neighbor, and we don't have water police, but we'll go give them a talking to if you want to do that. So what are some of the other things we're doing other than water conservation? Well, our big program that we're doing, because we're having trouble doing emergency water. We're taking waste water from waste treatment plants, which we now use for irrigation and cooling towers, and starting to turn it into we're turning it into distilled water quality and spreading it on the ground to keep the local aquifer, which is kind of our storage of last resort, full. And this is a big program. It's like a $700 million program. Unfortunately, water projects are so expensive. Like we're building a new reservoir in Pacheco Pass. That's the road to Los Banos. That's like $2.1 billion. retrofitting this Anderson reservoir, the one that has seismic issues. That's like $1 billion. I think Sheldon and I are from Illinois, and we had a Senator Dirksen, who said, $1 billion here and $1 billion there. We're now talking about real money. So none of this is cheap. It's going to affect water rates, and there's a lot of social justice issues around water rates and water issues that I could talk endlessly about. And if you want to talk about it in this chat, since we're all here. So basically, if we go on to the next slide, this is a big thing we're doing. We're kind of all in this together. Most of the water systems are connected. So when they start running out, everyone's going to be running out. So that's some of this stuff. Oh, there's the phone number to call if you're like really angry and want to rat on your neighbor. At 408-630-2000. I'm not saying do that, but there's my cell phone number if you want to talk more about it. So that's kind of that's the drought thing in a nutshell. I kind of cut down the presentation a little bit. I didn't want to, go in, like I said, we could talk all about, what happened, part of Masada, where running out of water was one of the things, or the fall of the Second Temple, how a lot of it was a water shortage. But we're pretty worried about it. So we're here to answer questions, hear ideas, etc. So thank you for the time. And I'd love to answer any questions or hear what you have to say. Or maybe Sheldon can come up with a brilliant idea, because he's like one of the smartest people I've ever met.
Gary, could you explain a little bit in detail how a gray water system works and what it entails?
So what a gray water system does is the common one takes water from your washer, which is, you would think, oh, there's dirt in it, but it's actually relatively clean compared to other sources. It's good enough for irrigation quality, and it puts it through like an activated charcoal filter and a kind of a sieve or a very fine strainer. And it turns it into irrigation quality water, because one of our beliefs are use the appropriate quality water for the appropriate use. Drinking water shouldn't be used for irrigation. It shouldn't be used for many processes. It shouldn't be used for cooling towers. We should use the right quality. And for irrigation, you can have a little bit of salt in the water. You can have, it doesn't have to be absolute drinking water pure. So that's basically what those systems are. There's people walk it in their shower. That's a good thing, and just throw it outside. I do that.
Mm-hmm. Then, so that's the soap or detergent in the water won't harm the landscaping.
That's right, because the filtration cuts it out.
And how hard is it to install? Do you need a plumber? Can you do it yourself?
So some of the things we do require a plumber and a permit. Most people I know kind of do a DIY, do it yourself on it, and have like their handy. So you can, I think it's handy, because I have one, a handy person can do it. Okay. But a lot of people go to a plumber anyhow. Mike, I don't know, to get the rebate, you have to get a permit, or do you just need to show some?
We make recommendations to some of the people that do that work as well. We have a list of people that have done it, and it can be taking the hose, putting a hose on the end of your washing machine and having that run out. But there's ways to do it properly. You don't want it to backfill. So there are some reasons to really make sure it's done properly, but it's not super complicated. This is not like turning your fireplace into, with natural gas or something. This is some of these cisterns, those are off the rain gutters. And so it's or rain barrel type things. That's not complicated plumbing.
You don't need a plumber for that. It's basically taking your gutter, and it goes on this surface of the barrel that has a screen on it. And at the bottom, it's kind of like an old fashioned, I don't know,
Rain barrel.
beer keg. So at the bottom, the cleaner water's down there, and you can put in your irrigation.
And they make them square now. So they're like Legos that can go along the side of your house instead of having these big barrels. It's just a thing that kind of modularly stacks together.
I I heard that some people say that there's a trade-off between using a cistern and actually letting the water go into the ground to fill the aquifer. Is there a danger if everybody had cisterns and collected all their rainwater and used it for themselves rather than letting it go into the community groundwater table?
I think here we're pretty far from that, because if you look at kind of the water usage, so all water on the ground, in fact, most water on the ground does not go into the aquifer or very quickly. How, like, for example, how we do it is we take a lot of our water to the Los Gatos ponds, and because it's gravel, it goes into the ground real quickly. A lot of clay, there's a clay layer in a lot of places in Santa Clara County, so it just doesn't go into the ground very much. It goes in the storm drains. What you really want is things like bioswales, which keep it around for a little bit. So that's actually your best, if you care about groundwater recharge, which is keep it so it's not all flowing all to the bay. You want to keep it for hours or a day or so. And there are some municipalities that are actually putting that as part of their code to keep it around. But I'm not that worried about the amount of rainwater you collect. This isn't like Colorado that taxes rainwater and actually doesn't allow you to take rainwater. We do allow that over here. And I think you'd be okay if you look at the numbers.
Okay. Linda asks, are there any issues with cisterns and the quality of water?
So, I mean, I wouldn't be drinking it myself unless the zombie apocalypse is coming, and then it's a handy supply. Again, this is for irrigation usage, trees, things like that. I mean, it depends what's on your roof. If you have something horrible on your roof, if you're storing, dissolvable lead, that's bad. Okay. But most people's roofs are not like that.
Okay. Gary said anyone can speak up and ask a question or put it in the chat and I will ask it for you.
Gary, I have a question. You said that the rain only contributed about 1% to the problem with the reservoir levels. Do you have any sense of what it did for the aquifer?
I do not know that. What I do know is the ponds that we use for recharge, which I don't know if it's a factor of 10 or 100, how much better like to be in gravel versus clay is, because clay is pretty impermeable. Mike, I know we've been drawing down the groundwater, but we're still in an okay normal because we've been kind of putting all our eggs in that basket. It's like our emergency storage. I think it might be too early to tell on that. We kind of read those.
It does take time for that. I mean, it goes down into the perk ponds, but it can take years to get to the deep part valley wide. But we've been taking all the water from Anderson, as much as possible was put back into the groundwater through the osier ponds. And so we've got some best practices of the people at Valley Water that have been, perk ponds have been around for a long time. LA's just now building some. So it is, and you would think that they should have done that a long time ago.
Hey, Mike, do you have that history chart of the groundwater? If we could find that, that might be.
I can pull that up.
And while I'm doing that, Sheldon, did that answer the question, or we don't? This will be a cool chart. So the question is, why is the district proposing to build a new reservoir versus raise the height of the dam at San Luis? Well, we are actually going to do, first, we don't own San Luis Reservoir. We're only about 4% of it. And most of the other people are ag, and they're much more sensitive to cost. But we are planning on doing that. That's owned by the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation and Department of Water Resources, which is the state and the federal government. We got to basically do both. That one is complicated because they have to move Highway 152, that road to that starts in Gilroy and goes to Los Banos. That's a tough one. But that's doable. And the new reservoir, it's in the county basically. So there's a lot of advantage to have water local in terms of emergency water supply. And San Luis Reservoir doesn't help the creeks. It turns out that the location of the reservoir in Pacheco Pass helps this threaten south central coast steelhead, and that gives us a lot of environmental cred. Okay, so here's a super cool graph. So on one axis in blue, I believe is the level of the groundwater, the aquifer. And in green is the population. Is that right? You can't see the axis here. But basically what happened is unfortunately here, unlike areas like San Francisco that had a big quake and a fire, and they grabbed water rights before everyone else, there wasn't a lot of people living here, but as people started moving here in the 20s and 30s, oh good, we have an axis now. All we had was natural rain. Well, we had the rain, the levels started dropping, and we had to start building reservoirs. So we started building reservoirs on number 2. Then the groundwater kind of level went up because it wasn't, we're saving some of it. And then as more and more people and this big inflection point got here, I think at number 4, we joined the state. Oh, what happened in 3? I can't remember, other than growth was a lot of growth. In 4, we joined the State Water Project, which is a canal that runs all the way to Los Angeles. And most people don't know that, unfortunately, we're on the same plumbing as Southern California for the most part. We joined that, imported water in, and then things kind of started dropping a little bit. And then we joined the federal project, which is one of those 2 canals, if you've ever driven down there, to bring things kind of into a better situation. So that's why actually Valley Water, Santa Clara Valley Water District came into existence. It's all about the groundwater levels. And if the groundwater levels are low, a lot of people today have shallow wells, especially in South County, especially in disadvantaged communities such as the Pajaro communities. And their wells will be the first to go dry. So we're pretty worried about that. And we think, unfortunately, that could happen next year. So that's why we came into existence, to keep the groundwater here. So hopefully that kind of answers more of the question, Sheldon. It's kind of a cool graph.
So the goal this year is trying to get residents to conserve 15% more than they have in the past.
That's right, 15% from 2019 levels.
I have a question. So it sounds like Valley Water is charged with providing water to everybody that needs water. Am I understanding that right?
Well, we do have, like what you call in the technology world, a service level agreement or a promise that you'll get all the water you need, other than during a drought where we'll say you'll get 80% of the water.
I see. So I know, like in Santa Barbara, some places they've used like building moratoriums, and you can't add more housing or more. Is there anything like that happening in this county?
So, real long answer to that, we're not a land use agency, so we can't tell people what to build or not build. And number 2, there are the reality is most of the building today, because there's new codes that are more efficient. And number 3, a lot of the construction is multifamily. So, if we took a bulldozer to Los Gatos and built multifamily instead, we would have so much less water usage, because they don't have outdoor lawns, and people multifamily are less water users. So, I hear that a lot. It's a political question, but the reality of it is most of the construction will save water, not take it away. People don't want to hear that.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the new buildings, especially if they're LEED certified, are meeting some really state-of-the-art water use guidelines as well. And our staff and the board are working to develop a model ordinance for what new development would include. That's still in the formative, it's still being formulated, but it's something that you're seeing more and more of. The new stuff is definitely, as the director mentioned.
And there's some communities. Yeah, and there's some communities like the city of Mountain View has really been like a leader in sustainability. They said, if you're a commercial building above X, you got a dual plumb. So that means your toilets, your everything that's not drinking water is recycled water. So, you know, there are some communities that, you know, are more sustainable than others, have beliefs in sustainability more than others.
I have a question. If I don't know, I'm not showing up, but hopefully this is Ed Stein. But looking at your chart that shows the kind of relative distribution between nature and agriculture and urban areas are only using 10% of the total. It looks like the amount for agriculture, if you even shave that by as little as 10%, you could greatly increase what's being used for residential and urban use. And there are a lot of things being grown in California, like almonds and rice, that are major water users. Then you can question why crops like that should be grown here. And who determines the allocations? And I know there's a lot of politics involved, especially in the agriculture sector, with water rights that some farmers have going back, 150 years or more. But it would seem that with the droughts and other severe conditions we're experiencing now, that maybe some legislative action is needed to make some adjustment in that for everyone's benefit, and not cut agriculture so much that, it really, really harms them, but that maybe they could scale back a little bit to help the cause.
So, my God, what a Pandora's box question that is. We've been fighting over water in this state since when the gold rush started, hydraulic mining. And it's that urban versus agriculture versus the environment fight. And the politics aren't always that clear, by the way. Like you mentioned rice, the biggest offender of rice is environmentalists in the Audubon Society. Habitat for Birds, they love the rice farmers. So it's not always as simple as you think. Or they renamed themselves actually last week. They have a different name. They're not Audubon Society anymore. But here's the thing about it. Most agriculture got there first, and you talk about a legislative solution. It has to be a constitutional solution. California Constitution, Article 10, Section 2 says first in time, first in use. It's kind of like who got to, your house first and was able to get, who made use of the land, like homesteading, got the rights. So in the Central Valley and north of the Central Valley and the Sacramento Valley, agriculture got there first, and they used it beneficially. So they're the ones who ended up with the water rights. Now, all water in California is owned by the state. It's called the public trust doctrine. But the rights are based on when you got there, when you started using it, how much was beneficially used, are you next to a river or not? So to say, well, agriculture should cut back, I might agree, but that we're going to have to change our state constitution for that. So it's a tough problem. I used to have hair before I got in water. And I compare it to other sectors in sustainability. I was in solar and in the electric industry for a long time, and those are easy problems compared to water, and the politics, the custom, the role of disadvantaged communities, the political power of folks is it's mind-numbing. It's a tough one to navigate.
So Gary, we've got low flow toilets and aerators in the showers and all the faucets. We've reduced the amount of grass in the yard and tried to put in drought tolerant plants and drip. What would be the next thing that would make a significant difference in the water use?
So you know, that's actually another issue around equity, which is it fair for you to be asked to do a 15%, not ask, we're actually mandating your water providers to do it, the ones we provide water to. So is it fair for you to do that? I'd say the answer is no. It should be the people who use for the size of their household, the age of their house, the size of their other things. There should be a water-based budget. And there are some people who are working on that. Actually, I did this startup before I got on the Water District Board that we did those, and it was pretty successful. But that's one thing you could do. People have a budget, and where you've hit your numbers, don't get the same hit cutback as maybe someone who has 5 acres in Monte Sereno.
The other question I have relates to metering. So right now we find out our real water use every other month. What about putting on smart meters, or can we add meters so if we have a leak or something, we can tell sooner that something's happening?
So the answer is absolutely and yes. In Valley Water, you know, as part of the CARE, we've given out some money to utilities to do, like I'm here in Los Altos Hills, and we have these meters that read every 15 minutes, and it works. I get leak notifications a lot, and then I can go to my gardeners, and that's actually a big problem. The gardeners think they're going to get fired if they don't put enough water on it. So what's known as AMI, automatic meter infrastructure, is a great idea. A lot of utilities, here's like this dirty secret. And it depends on how they're regulated, and unlike the electricity where most everyone their electricity comes from investor owned, most water comes from, we're a little bit weird in the Bay Area, but comes from government agencies and stuff like that. But they all have these high fixed costs, and when you conserve, it makes it hard to cover the fixed costs of all the employees and stuff like that. So they say they like conservation and they'll do it, but there's a variety of different responses to conservation and smart meters.
I
Victor,
noticed.
is Flume one of the smart meters? Is that something, or is that
So I
just
think
an app?
Flume is one of them. There's a bunch. There's Flow, there's Flume, but I'm talking about ones that the utilities do
Got it.
themselves. Although a super cool thing about those is sometimes your insurance company will buy those for you because they automatically detect leaks, and you can shut them off from remote. And I've heard of more and more people who've been able to get like a discount on their insurance rate for installing those kind of automatic shutoffs or leak detection. I'm talking about the utility paying to do the upgrade. It's probably pretty complicated in Los Gatos because you're hilly, kind of like here. It was very hard to implement because, you know, they use self-service and some other things. Sheldon can tell you about 900 megahertz versus, what was your frequency, 11 or 44 or 60? You know, the complexity of all that. But those are great. AMI is great. We should legislate that you need them.
I noticed on your chart that for Santa Clara County, you showed that I think it was 12.5% of the residential usage is due to leaks. So that's an area that people can pay more attention to. And sub-metering does help you with that. I'll just put in a little plug. I work for a little company in Santa Cruz called EKM, and we make water and electricity and gas sub-meters. I just don't push the gas too much because I'm not a fossil fuel proponent, but it rounds out their product line. But
Maybe we could give rebates. Maybe there's a way we could work together on that.
Cool.
Well, we give money for people who are willing to sub-meter.
Yeah, and so our meters, you can read in real time what your usage is, and one way to detect leaks is just if you're not expecting that you're using any water flow, say in the middle of the night, and you see it, then you know there's something wrong.
We had one of those. We were on vacation and got a note from our keeper that the hose had broke and she turned the water off, but I forget how many gallons had already flowed out before it was discovered.
But I think the national statistics is about 10% of residential water use can be attributed to leaks, and that's just a waste. So that's something homeowners can do. And my next question is, I know that a lot of people like Linda and Mark and my husband and I have gotten rid of our lawns and put in drought tolerant plants. Do you have any statistics on your website that shows how much people save in water when they do that? Or are there any programs kind of making that easier for people to do? I think the biggest hurdle is the cultural norm of having a lawn, which goes back to Thomas Jefferson, brought it from Versailles. But if we could show people that you can have a beautiful property without water intensive plants, maybe we'd have more takers.
Maybe we could have a celebrity program. I mean it. They go out to their lawns, you know. I don't know who's our biggest celebrity in the county, but maybe they could show their lawns. I agree, it's a cultural thing that maybe it works in the Midwest when you're next to lake. You know, if you're next to the Great Lakes, it's not as much of an issue, but it's really an issue here. I don't know. I ripped out my lawn, or almost all of it, and it's not that bad. I don't think it's that bad. It's kind of interesting, you know. So
Does Valley Water, as part of its landscape rebate program, provide like help with that, or you're kind of like on your own?
No, we have a list of folks that will help gardeners. I think we have to do a lot more gardener education the more I kind of think about this. Maybe instead of just having a model ordinance, Mike, we could have a model gardening contract with your gardener.
We do hold a landscape summit with the landscape designers and gardeners, like the big firms. And I was brand new at Valley Water. I've been there 2 years, but the first one, there were 150 people at this thing. And it filled our chambers into overflow. And so it's gone virtual. And some of those videos, I put a website that has some of those, and we record them. And so they're on our website as well. So,
That's
but you're right. We definitely, you know, we educate the users, but it's if your gardener, if you turn it down and then the gardener turns it back on because you won't have a lawn to mow, then we're defeating ourselves, right?
Gary, I think some of the questions were with regard to financial support as well. Whether you provide financial support for someone who's incurring the cost of ripping out their lawn and putting in a drought tolerant solution.
We do. We'll give you money, and you'll save money. Isn't it
$3,000?
$3,000.
One thing if you're doing those seminars, that sounds like a great idea. The city of Watsonville gave stickers to their businesses who adopted alternatives to single-use plastic. So they had a green business sticker on their door. It would be really neat if the landscape architects or gardeners that took the seminar could put on their literature website brochures that they were a Valley Water approved green gardener or some designation, so that they could say, I took this course and I'm approved by the water agencies to help you conserve.
I don't think that's a crazy idea at all. We got to do something, because it's, you know, if you look in the state, we're uniquely, well, not unique, we're one of the places, along with like Sonoma County and the Klamath way extreme north, we're probably in the worst situation of everyone just because of the reservoir issue. And our location, because people south of us have stored a lot of water in the ground and water banks in Kern County, but unfortunately we're north of all of that. So we just don't have a lot of storage. So every idea helps.
So Gary, I know, I think on your website, there's a place that has information on rebates and also information, kind of checklist for what to do room by room. Can you tell us a little about that? What resources we can find at Valley Water and where to look for those?
Sure. So while I'm talking about them, we'll have Mike put stuff up. We have an app that's not bad also, that has some things in it. This watersavings.org, which is, when we say my website, it's not mine, you know, I'm elected by you, you know, I work for you. So it's actually your website. So I just want to get that right. That's where kind of the sum total of our ideas is up there. We're always looking for new stuff. We're pretty nervous about next year, especially if people do not conserve.
I think one thing that all of us here can do is talk to our neighbors about this and point them to watersavings.org and some of these ideas.
Can you tell us about some of the products that are available?
Well, we don't sell products, you know, we just
Right.
mentioned that we'll give rebates for them. You know, something we give rebates to is these smart controllers. I think these are super cool. I don't know if anyone has any of these. Like the thing that can control an irrigation system, like mine knows about rain. It knows when it's the rainy season. It knows about water in the soil, and it just doesn't turn on. I saw another one that actually uses a laser that kind of looks around and, oh, that's not an area we have to water. So people are working on, people have stuff like that. And the rebates were so high, I think it was almost free. And it's like a plug and play compatible to like those Rainbirds that people are used to. But there's a super cool app and you can turn this thing on and off when you're on vacation and stuff like that. That's one I like a lot, but I'm a nerd. Or I'm working on a new startup. It's water conservation meets dating. So in this app, as Sheldon knows, I was in the dating business, and you find the closest person to take a shower with. What do you think? Yeah. No, it's a hard problem. I don't know. It's all ideas are welcome. I mean, I think we should give rebates. You know, I just found out about this gardener thing from talking to someone's gardener. Like, oh, I got to water more. I'm looking at this guy doing this screw, and he goes, I'll get fired. I'm like, wow, turns out to be a common thing among gardeners. I think another thing is maybe people moving to tankless water heaters, because the time people turn their shower on, which we saw what usage is waiting for it to get hot, is not zero either. So it's going to be all these things that add up in Santa Clara County. The big stuff, whether it be like what they do in Israel, Desal, we really can't do those solutions here. Too far from the ocean. I know people are wondering what. Usually I get a Desal question. I'm kind of surprised I don't hear one. The bay's too shallow where we are, and the ocean's too far away. But there are areas like Santa Barbara and probably some parts of Sonoma that are going to have to go do that, whether they want to do it or not.
So you're mentioning tankless hot water heaters. One of the things that we did was get a recirculating pump, so that the water that would be a good thing to have rebates.
That's a good call. These are good ideas. I'm writing some of these down to ask our water conservation people. You know, as things get more grim, I think we're going to have to think out of the box more.
So, oh, go on, Elisa.
Do you see that? When do you think you would put rationing into effect? Do you have a threshold?
So what we've decided to do is leave it up to the retailers to decide, because every city is different what works for them. Like some cities were pretty hardcore and put a constrictor in big users lines so they could only use, what's known as health and safety water, like, 100 gallons per person per day. There's other places that decided to do more carrot. There's other places that actually were until the recent rain, they shouldn't have stopped, but they're knocking on doors of big users. There are one or two that are considering publishing the list of big users. So there's a lot of different solutions. It's kind of like the federal government versus the state. There's a lot of different things, different municipalities and different water purveyors are going to do depending on their situation. I mean, there's some more conservative communities who kind of believe, well, we can use as much water as we want as long as we pay for it. And then there's others who are, well, more progressive, who say, no, that's not our values. And we're not going to allow you to do it. So it depends where you are. And we might have to do we're in the state legislature to get some more powers that maybe will work on those communities who have that belief that we can use as much as we want as long as we pay.
Are there any laws coming through in this next state legislative calendar that you would say we should keep an eye on and either support or oppose?
Well, I don't think the show is a political organization, but you could reach out to me and I could give you some, as things go into, there are some people who are more active on bills than others, like Senator Becker here, who represents I think he stops at Sunnyvale. He had some water legislation that made it. But, it's controversial. I mean, people like,
Oh,
Oh, he froze. I know where he was going though. Is that creating one rule for that works in every part of the state, even in our county. Palo Alto gets its water from the Hetch Hetchy system, which has lots of water actually right now, versus our situation where we're importing it and are part of multiple programs. Are you back, Director?
I am. We just don't have very good internet up here.
well,
So I'm wondering if anyone else has questions.
Look,
I
myself,
did have a question.
Yeah, go for it.
Several years ago, we put in a drought-resistant garden in our front yard. And I'm wondering, are we still eligible for that rebate, or does it have to be done not retroactively?
It has to be done relatively soon. Maybe you can find some area around your house that you have some more.
When we did it, we were told there was rebates, but when we applied for it, this is maybe 2, 3, 4 years ago, they said they ran out of money.
Where do you live?
In Los Gatos.
Why don't you give me a call and I'll see I'll ask around what the policy is on that.
Okay, can you text or put it in the chat, your phone number?
Sure.
Thank you.
I just don't know, because we do some documentation, some before and after pictures, because, we are guardians of the ratepayers' money. So, but I'll ask. I just don't know the question. If you were out of money during the rebate and you can prove you did it.
Okay, that's fine. I appreciate it. If you can't, that's okay. It's
I'll track it down. You're the first person who asked me that question.
Okay, thank you.
No worries. What else? Anything else? Well, I'm your public servant, so hit me up if you want to talk more, or go for it.
Well, thank you, Gary and Mike. Thank you both for being with us tonight. It was great to know who's our district director. And for all the information you've shared with us, it's really helpful to understand more about where our waters comes from and where it's going, to know what we might be able to do and how much to worry. Before we go, I'd like to just let our audience know about some upcoming events. On Sunday at 10:30 on Zoom is our planning meeting for Share Sustainability. And we'd love to see you and have you help us plan our activities for the next 6 months.
Or if you can't come and you have some thoughts on programs like this that you might want us to organize that have something to do with conservation, the environment, just let us know.
And then on November 7th at 5 p.m. on Zoom, the Dayenu Circle of Jewish Silicon Valley, which is a climate action or Jewish climate action organization, will have a guest speaker, Dahlia Rockowitz, who's the Dayenu's legislative analyst, will be coming with an update of, depending what's happened to the Build Better Act, what's in it, what's not in it at that point, and what we can do about it, what our next steps should be. And Sunday, November 14th at 10:30, also on Zoom, we're going to have a really fun program, Ideas for Holiday Gifts That Make a Difference. This fun program is going to look at ways to reduce, reuse, and recycle, focusing on sharing products that can replace single-use plastics in each room of the house. And it should be really fun. We did this at the Back to Campus event at Shir Hadash, and people were really excited about finding out what you could do to replace your toothpaste or your laundry detergent. And we hope you'll join us then. It'll be a fun program. If you have ideas, Elisa and I would love to hear from you, and you can email us, and I'm going to put in the chat, environment@shirhadash.org.
Also, take note of these great links that Mike and Gary shared with us, so you can get ideas from their websites.
And we have recorded this session, and it will be posted on the archive on the Share Sustainability section of the Shir Hadash website for you to go back to. And let your friends know. If they missed it tonight, they can still see it. So thanks so much, everyone, for being with us tonight. And Gary, thanks for making time for us, carving time out. And Mike, thanks for all your help with organizing.
Thanks very much.
Our pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good seeing you all.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.